Good morning, good morning. It's Jen here. Back with some Sabaton. Sabaton. We do like a bit of Sabaton. Night Witches. Now this was a request. Baz Keen said, now you've done No Bullets Fly, the animated story. I needed to do Night Witches next. Now this is about the female pilots, isn't it, for the Soviets? Now I did say on my last one, do you want me to do the history one afterwards? So I'm going to. Now I noticed there is a part 2 and I think possibly a part 3. I'm not going to do all of them because that's going to be a really long video. So we will do the first one that came up. And yeah, we'll do that straight after this. So we'll see, because that's a 15-minute video. I don't want this to go on too long. So let's go. Let's get stuck in straight away. I'm going to have tissues handy because I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. It's going to set me off. I'm going to get emotional. We've just had Remembrance Sunday here in the UK. And today it's also a particularly appropriate day to do this, I assume, because this is the 11th day of the 11th month. And in fact, I'm recording this and it is just the 11th hour, which is kind of weird and kind of appropriate though. So, yeah, so by the time you see this, it won't be, but I'm recording this on the 11th day, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So yeah, cool stuff, cool beans. Let's do this. Let's get into this.
The Germans are resting behind the lines of the Eastern Front, their tents in neat rows. All is in order in the quiet and still of the night. It's cold, and the winter snow crunches under the jackboot of a guard. Looking up into the sky, the snow starts to drift down. It's peaceful here. Was that a noise from the sky? No, it's just the wind. Suddenly, piercing the still of the night, there's an otherworldly scream and a whoosh as a dark form speeds by. And was that a woman's laughter in the distance? There are no engine sounds, and the suddenly fearful German soldier loses his footing and whispers under his breath, Die Nachthexen.
Night Witches.
The world is all at once a bloom of fire and ash, and 2 more dark forms pass without a sound. Hearing the whooping and celebration of these supernatural creatures, the guard shakes himself from his fear and calls out, Die Nachthexen! Die Nachthexen! The Night Witches! In the sky above, 3 planes of the soon-to-be famous 588th Night Bomber Regiment, their engines now running, turn east for home. Time to rearm and refuel for another mission. Coming into land, they're greeted by their Commissar, Yevdokia Rashkevich. The young girls that form the pilots and navigators are between the ages of 17 and 26. They are desperate to take the fight to the Germans and have travelled from all over Russia to join the all-women regiments.
You go, girls.
588th is where the least skilled of all the women are placed. But that didn't stop them from carving their name in history. In the early days, they were largely ridiculed by the Soviet men. Given men's uniforms that were too big and shoes all of the same size, the women did the best they could with the clothes, making them fit with belts or filling the large men's shoes with stuffing. The equipment they were given was woefully out of date. The Polikarpov PO2 was a 2-man trainer, underpowered and made of cloth and wood. These old string bags were nicknamed crop dusters, or even worse, sewing machines due to the noise their tiny engines made.
Wow.
But the women of the 588th ignored the taunts, and despite the odds, turned the plane's shortcomings to their advantage. The planes at maximum speeds were far below the stall speeds of any of the German fighters. Giving them a tight turning circle, they were almost impossible to hit. They were susceptible to small arms fire and anti-aircraft guns, so their strategy was to attack in threes, with a navigator in each plane. At her signal, the pilot would cut the engines and swoop in slowly, silently, dropping their bombs, dealing death from above. Unexpected, undetected, stealth perfected. If necessary, the other 2 would draw fire from the fighters or from the ground. They slept during the day and rose at dusk to take their vengeance on the invaders. This unnatural bravery in their stealth tactics earned them their title, the Night Witches. The German ace Johannes Steinhoff said, We simply couldn't grasp that the Soviet airmen that caused us the greatest trouble were in fact women. These women feared nothing.
Oh.
"32 women, both pilots and navigators, never came home."
I was just going to say, I wonder how many died doing that, because you've got anti-aircraft on a tiny little a plane like a biplane like that, and you've got the German planes trying to take them out as well. It's not 32. I don't know how many there were in total, but we might find out in the history bit. I'm sorry I didn't stop it anywhere through that, because I was kind of intrigued by the story and concentrating on that, and then the music kicked in, which was just bloody awesome.
The 588th became highly decorated and respected, flying more than 23,000 sorties, dropping over 3,000 tons of bombs. 23 nightwitches were awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union, although they were disbanded just 6 months after the war and not allowed to fly in the victory parade, given their planes were so slow.
Oh, bastards.
From 1956, after she retired from active service, their commissar Yevdokia Rashkevich took it upon herself to find the site of every single one of her girls that was downed, to mark the place and to pay her respects to each one of the incredibly brave night witches.
There were a lot of bravery shown. I was watching a video for Remembrance Sunday yesterday, and I had to switch the chat off, because it was great to see lots of different countries coming in and saying hello from wherever. But then they were getting onto discussions of the royal family and even going back to Diana and Meghan Markle. And then they were talking about politics. And then we have people saying, oh, we should be a republic in Britain. And we're never going to be a republic. That's not the way we're going to go. If we're going to go anywhere, it's not going to be good. And I'm not going to get into that. But I just thought, and then the 11 o'clock came for the silence, and people it's still yammering on. So I just had to turn it off in the end, because it's just like, you're here to watch. This is a ceremony to remember the people who died and sacrificed their lives for us. And you're just yammering on about this, that, and the other. And it was, it's just, got my goat. It got my goat. I thought, this is the one day. We have so many days when we're respecting this, that, and the other cause. And we have one day to say thanks to people who actually gave their lives for us. And people are just talking through it. And there were a few in there saying, look, can you just show some respect and be quiet for 2 minutes and keep on topic. This is about remembering war heroes, not discussing politics and the royal family itself, going back to fucking people who passed away. Anyway, I'm going to shut up about that. Shut up, and we're going to switch over. We're going to switch over to the History Channel and just get some history about this. Now, I said there are some more videos on this, but I'm not going to cover all of them. Anyway, let's do this.
When you think of the soldiers fighting the Second World War, you probably think of men with machine guns.
However, in our song Nightwitches, we're singing about badass women in bomber planes.
Badass in bumper plates. Doesn't always work, the subtitles. Not bumper plates, bomber planes. And we get to hear a bit of the music again, which is always good.
The large-scale industrialization of the Soviet Union in the late 1920s and 1930s opened up the country's economy for women in the workplace, and there was indeed no job for which a woman could not apply. Soviet propaganda encouraged them to join the workforce and steer the great machines of modernization, and the most fantastic symbol of that particular age of machines was the airplane. Many were inspired by Soviet heroine Marina Raskova, who set world records for long-distance flights, showing what pilots and planes from the Soviet Union could achieve. Newly emerging and quite popular flying clubs were also a chance for many women to escape the monotony, or the poverty, of their homes and learn how to become an aircraft mechanic or even a pilot themselves. Fast forward to the summer of 1941. Weeks after the German invasion, hundreds of thousands of Soviet women flocked to the colors, enlisting as nurses, signalers, or anti-aircraft gunners. The experienced female pilots of the flying club served as instructors and advisors for male recruits, but were not allowed themselves to fly into combat. The argument was that there were enough male pilots available. Marina Raskova, however, was determined to make a difference. With her influence in Moscow's political circles as a hero of the Soviet Union, she appealed to Stalin himself and got permission to create 3 all-female flying units: the 586 Fighter Regiment, the 587 Heavy Bomber Regiment, and the 588 Night Bomber Regiment. Raskova was a natural leader, and her call for volunteers was soon answered by hundreds of young women from all over the Soviet Union, hoping to break into the ranks of elite female pilots. By mid-October, as confusion and chaos swept Moscow in the face of the rapid German advance, Raskova had set up her training camp at the large aerodrome in the city of Engels on the Volga River. There, the women of the 3 regiments were to be trained with planes, engines, armaments, and aeronautical studies and military drills, while the college-educated women were trained as navigators. Those with factory or armory experience would work as mechanics. Naturally, all volunteers wanted to become famous fighter pilots themselves, but only the most talented and experienced pilots were accepted into the fighter regiment. They needed lightning-quick reactions and the ability to remain calm in battle. The professional pilots with many hours of experience were put into the Heavy Bomber Regiment, led by Raskova herself. Those with less experience put into the Night Bomber Regiment, but those women may have needed the greatest courage them all. The night bombers were to fly the Polikarpov U-2, a flimsy biplane compared to then modern dive bombers. It had been designed and manufactured since the late 1920s and was used most often as a training plane. It had two cockpits, one for the student and one for the instructor. It was a small and slow aircraft made from lightweight plywood and
Roofie coming in to see me and buggered off again.
which was finely woven fabric made out of cotton. It was cheap to manufacture, unimpressive and outdated, but nonetheless a reliable workhorse for transporting the wounded, dropping supplies, or reconnaissance flights. The Soviets nicknamed it the crop duster or the duck, while to the Germans it was to be known as the sewing machine or the plywood Russ, since it was totally defenseless and too slow to outrun any of the German fighter planes. It could only operate in the safety of night. In fact, though, even small arms fire could bring it down fairly easily. But the overall situation was so bleak that even those little planes became symbols of hope and resistance. Over time, the women began to appreciate the simplicity of the crop duster, especially since the women of the heavy bomber regiment had to fly the Su-2, which was nicknamed the bitch because of how difficult it was to master. But despite Soviet theoretical ideology of equality between the sexes, Russian machismo was pretty merciless, wearing boots, tunics, and greatcoats way too large for them since they were designed for men. The women were constantly mocked and teased by their male counterparts for their lack of femininity. But this only hardened their determination, since to them, a soul...
It's like, why do you want to be feminine when you're fighting a war? I mean, Christ, it's the last thing on your mind is like, oh, we've got to, let's get the dresses out, girls. We're going bombing. I mean, come on. Good on them for having a go. And good on them for bloody taking on something so flimsy to do it with that they couldn't protect themselves from. Crazy.
Soldier was a soldier. Raskova ordered the women to crop their hair, and the battalion's commissar forbade anything she saw as girl talk and prohibited any sort of flirtatious behavior. By late May 1942, they were finally equipped with enough U-2 aircraft to prepare for combat. By summer, they left the aerodrome for the southwestern front to meet the German advance on Stalingrad and the Caucasus. As Axis forces were advancing on Rostov, Raskova's night bombers hit the German ammunition and fuel dumps, the vehicles, and the ground troops. Now, it was the navigator's job to find the target and close in on enemy lines. Then the pilot...
And all this Mickey taking of women and navigating. So they obviously could do it. They found their targets. So stop taking the mick out of the women when you're in cars saying you can't navigate.
It would turn off the engine and silently glide through the night.
Ah.
The first planes would throw down flares to illuminate the targets, and the loads would be dropped. Then they would turn on their engines and escape before the Germans could fight back. The U-2s were converted to bombers by simple, at first improvised attachments. A bomb load of up to 300 kilos was slung under the wings. Okay, this was not enough to inflict a lot of damage, but that wasn't the main purpose of the night bombers. They were to constantly harass the enemy, to deprive them of sleep and wear them down, to grant them no rest periods. And for that, the Germans hated them. After learning that the night bombers were usually piloted by women, they would give them their famous nickname, the Nachthexen, the night witches. Every morning,
the Noctexen.
They came back with red faces and bloodshot eyes. They rebuilt their lives around their nocturnal life, having dinner in the morning and going straight to bed. They were constantly tired and hungry, but they were sure proud of showing the Soviet Union that women could fly as well as any man. And with every successful mission, they earned more respect from the male pilots and officers. But that would not protect them from the constant danger they faced. They had no parachutes, since Soviet high command figured that in case of engine failure, the planes could simply glide back to Earth. This
right.
totally disregarded the fact that the percale cotton fabric and plywood frame burned like crazy. And if that ever happened, it was likely that both pilot and navigator burned to death. But to Soviet high
Not
command,
a nice way to go.
that was still preferable to being captured alive by the Germans. In fact, those who were shot down or crashed behind enemy lines were expected to fight to the death, as capture was dishonorable to any Soviet soldier and would leave a stigma for the rest of their lives. Even pilots who were shot down behind the lines but hid and made it safely back to their own lines were interrogated and often condemned to death by the commissars.
Wow.
On January 4th,
Harsh.
1943, Roskova died in an accident on her way to the Stalingrad front. But the 588 was determined to live by her ideals. And as one pilot wrote, it was a time for bombing and bombing. The Soviet counterattack prompted the hasty withdrawal.
Can you imagine 17 to 26-year-old girls today doing this? We're too soft. We're too soft. It's the sacrifices of this generation here that made life so much easier for us that we just wouldn't have a clue what to do. Any hardship is the slightest thing that we moan about is really just ridiculous when you look at what they achieved and what they did and what they went through. It's crazy.
Soviet counterattack prompted the hasty withdrawal of the Germans from the Caucasus and gave the nightwitches more than enough opportunities to harass and attack the retreating troops. From the steppes near Stalingrad to the high mountains of the Caucasus, the praise for the nightwitches grew. The freezing winter nights through which they flew at high altitudes with open cockpits did not discourage the women from fulfilling their missions. In fact, only once were they forced to remain grounded for a time. On the night of July 31st, 1943, during the German counteroffensive on the Taman Peninsula in Novorossiysk, the nightwitches approached the German positions and noticed that the anti-aircraft batteries were strangely silent. Suddenly, flares lit up the sky. It was a German night fighter attack, and in moments, U-2 planes were falling out of the skies, burning to the ground. The survivors broke off, scattering back into the darkness. Such high casualties in one night were a shock to the regiment, but one that didn't last long. The war that eventually turned against the German invaders brought the witches further to the west, to the Kuban, to the Krim, to Belarus, to Poland, and eventually Germany itself. Sometimes they made up to a dozen sorties a night, with only a few minutes of breaks in between. There are many stories of those young women who came from many different backgrounds and who did share their own personal tales of heroism, tragedy, and idealism. We were young and fearless. The fear came later, one of the survivors would recall.
Hang about. Let's just I'm just going to come back because I want to read that.
We were young and fearless. The fear came later, one of the survivors would recall. Heroic achievement.
Oh, man. Can't read it. Ina Kalacheva quoted in defending the motherland, the Soviet women who fought right. Okay. Put that back on again. Why put that right down there? It's very difficult to see.
The fear came later, one of the survivors would recall. Heroic achievements and accomplishments led to more heroes of the Soviet Union than any other Soviet bomber regiment, 23 by the end of the war, with usually at least 800 sorties made. After the war, and after the regiment was disbanded, their commissar, Yevdokia Rachkevich, took it upon herself to personally search for the crash sites of every last one of her lost flyers to provide an accurate history of the regiment and the women that served and fought with it. Okay, badass women in bomber planes. That was a really good description, right? So how did you guys decide to choose this?
Actually, you know, when we started doing research for heroes, this was one of the first that came up for us. Yeah.
Wow.
That's been in our what do you call it? secret Sabaton archive for a while.
All right.
And yeah, we just thought it was a perfect way to open the album as well.
Yeah.
We have a tradition of doing something surprising for the first song, and I think that massive opening was a perfect way to start off the album, you know?
Yeah, and then the tempo change into the
Oh
chorus.
yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, and we did something different there also with the chorus being half beat compared to the rest of the song, and which is something I really hate.
But if you hate it, why did you allow it to happen in this instance?
It's the only time I actually thought it worked.
Yeah?
You know, we wanted that.
Whose suggestion was it? Who said, "Hey, come on, let's do this"? And you said,
Oh, I did that to myself.
"Oh, okay."
So, but no, I remember so clearly when we were doing the PR for this album. It's a couple of years ago now, but I was doing an interview and I was in the final stages of doing something else. I was in the studio. Interviewer was a bit nervous, I should say, and not used to doing interviews. And we had like, I think, a regular 30-minute interview. I was on the phone. He asked me to tell something. Well, you have a lot of stories. Could you tell me something from the album, you know, story-wise? And I started, yeah, well, I can make an example out of the first song. And I started telling the story of the Nightwitches.
Okay.
And I got a little bit carried away, you know, because I was proud of the song and the story. So I, you know, got carried away. And I probably spoke for about 8 minutes about only that song and the story about it. When I was finished, it got silent. And then I hear, okay, and the next song?
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Oh, that's brilliant. No. Now, what was the reception for Nightwitches? You know, I mean, was this, because this is not something that's familiar to people.
No. The story in itself is fantastic, no matter if it would have been men or women.
Yeah.
The fact that it is women, it's a, you know, extra nice bonus, I think.
Yeah.
And
it's very Soviet Union, too.
yes,
you know?
and it's still, you know, a part of our live set, very popular with the fans and us as well. I think we have some of the coolest, you know, pyro and video stuff going on that song as well.
Absolutely.
So I actually really enjoy playing that because I get off, we all I guess, go off stage as the live intro for that song starts. And I sing the intro off stage, and I just get running in on the first boom of the verse.
But I have a very important question that I'm pretty certain everybody, not only everybody who watches Sabaton history, but everybody who's ever seen Sabaton or listened to Sabaton wants to know. Now, Nightwitches, right? They you know, to avoid you know, any outward appearances of too much femininity and stuff because of problems with the male soldiers and stuff, they all cut their hair really short. They all crop their hair, right? One, do you think any of them had your hairstyle?
I certainly hope not.
Two, do we have any pictures of you when you were a kid with like the same? Did you have the same like?
I was born like this.
All right, Joachim. Well, thank you very much for this today.
Thank you very much.
You know, I always love talking to you about these songs. All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.
On Sabaton History.
I like the little rubber duck that got in there. It's kind of a bit weird having a little yellow rubber duck. I bet this was awesome live, actually.
All right, everyone. You know the drill. You click, get some subscriptions, check out Indy's other channels, become a Patreon. That's it. Get the fuck out of here.
Okay, we will. Guys, well, that was interesting. I enjoyed that. In fact, I am going to click. I've got the scrap guy going around singing any old iron. Oh, God. Let me just do a... How can there be like people who dislike this? Wow. Right, I'm liking both of those. Guys, yeah, please, description, links in description for both channels and both videos. And also to Yarn Hub, who did the animation for the song, are all in the description below. So please go and chuck them some likes. And check out the History channel. It's really interesting. I haven't watched the story to the last one we did, to No Bullets Fly, so I must go and watch the proper story. I did actually have the pilot on the previous one, the pilot Stigler, Jovita Stigler, come and make a comment on my reaction. Apparently she does that quite a lot, which is cool. Is the pilot's daughter. So that was cool. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the music. I loved the story. It was very interesting. And the history behind it. I might have to go and watch the other parts to this, see what else is there about the Night Witches. That'll be interesting, and I encourage you to do the same. Go and check out what else they've covered on it. Probably some of the pilots, I would think, themselves. Yeah, that was awesome. I will be doing more Sabaton, and I will be doing more. And it will be like a double bill as such, because there will be the history behind it as well. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please chuck me a like, and I hope. Hopefully you stuck with me to the end of this. It's quite a long one. I didn't interrupt too much. But yeah, it was what can you say? It's a moving story, but there are so many. Which is good in a way, because Sabaton can cover them and we can go and watch them. I'll have to check out their album, actually. They were mentioning it quite a lot, their recent album. I need to go and have a look at some point. I'll see what else is on there. But yeah, guys, I will see you in the next Sabaton. I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day. Be good. If you can't be good, be careful. I will see you soon. Take care. Bye for now. Bye.